the most important skill that someone working in operations needs to develop. It's not AI, it's not ABM, it's not any specific go-to-market tactic or technology.
Welcome to season 3 of Hitchhiker's Guide to Marketing Analytics. I'm Nadia Davis, VP of Marketing at Capitalmind, and I will be your host today as usual. If you guys are new to this event, most likely a lot of you have been to previous episodes. If you haven't, I highly recommend to check them out on demand. Two housekeeping items before we get started. For you to see things full screen, there is an expand button at the bottom. Go ahead and expand it. We will be taking Q&A at the end. So if you have questions on the right-hand side of your screen, there is either chat or Q&A button. Use either or. Also tell us where you are joining from. That would be great. And I am super excited about today's session. For those of you who have attended previous episodes, you know that we don't invite anyone to this event who is not a specialist and an erudite in their area of expertise. And I got a fantastic guest today. So let me fire up the deck where we will be talking about, anyone? Alignment. I feel like alignment has become a cheesy word because everybody talks about alignment. A lot of people don't know what it means. But I think about it the same way how you would think about talking about religion or politics at the Thanksgiving table, right? Go and try to get everyone to say yes to something, whatever polar opinion that might be. So our guest today, Andrew Dimmick, Andrew, I'm bringing you up on the stage, will share his experience of what it is to bring people together from polar opposite or, strongly opinionated points of view. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Nadia, and thanks everybody for coming today. I'm really excited to be here. Nadia and I have become connected. I think it's 2 or 3 years now that you and I have known each other.
Mobsapalooza, the same
Palooza,
place.
that's the great connector for the operations and kind of analytics world. And I'm really excited, and I'm super humbled that I was invited to be here and to join an incredible lineup of speakers. And just so everyone knows me, gets to know me, I'm Andrew Dimmick. I'm the marketing operations manager at ObservePoint. ObservePoint is we're a software company. We sell a web governance platform. Essentially, we'll audit websites and scan them to identify, what pages are broken, what tags fire on what pages, are you storing cookies on people when you shouldn't be after they opt out, like anything and everything you could imagine about auditing your web governance and your web governance strategy, we handle in our platform. And I'm our marketing ops manager. So I actually live in the cool area where I use our own product. So that's always a fun thing whenever you're working in any role that you have and you get to use your product. So I want to talk a little bit more about me and why Nadia and I got together to talk about this. Is we connected and we're like, hey, there's this really cool idea that no one's talking about right now. And everyone's talking about AI, everyone's talking about really, really cool things, but no one's talking about what I think is more important than those. And let me give you some background to who I am and how this conversation came to be. So like a lot of people in ops, like I kind of fell into this. Like I didn't go to school for marketing ops or RevOps or whatever you have at your organization. And I actually started my career as a data analyst. And the company that I worked at, they said, hey, we have this tool called HubSpot, and we need someone to send out emails and analyze how our marketing is doing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me see how that works. And 10 years later, here I am, like running marketing ops for a software company. And that's the reason that happens is, because ops, we're the ones touching a lot of elements, the entire go-to-market process. Like out of necessity, people working in revenue operations become the person who has to like explain marketing data to sales or finance data back to marketing. There has to be somebody to have that middle ground, and people that work in systems really become that person because they touch all the elements of the go-to-market process. And what's interesting about me is I actually don't report to the VP of marketing here at ObservePoint, and that's intentional. And it actually surprises a lot of people. I think a marketing ops is more often than not decentralized, meaning a lot of ops teams, like the marketing ops guy or girl, whoever they are, reports to the VP of marketing, and sales ops reports to the VP of sales, and CS ops reports to the VP of customer success. Like in my experience, that's been more common than what we do at ObservePoint, where the entire ops team is centralized into one business unit. And what I don't want anyone to think is that, oh, if I don't have that structure, I can't do alignment. I'm not in this specific role as this kind of external diplomat. I don't want you to think that. It's more of, that's just context to how I've come to think about operations and the role that I feel that we play in an organization, regardless of whether you're centralized or decentralized. Like, these are skills that anyone can develop. And the way that here's how I think about my role. And I think of myself as like my entire, I tell people this all the time, that my entire job is to make the marketing team more efficient. There's this kind of a deep cut. Like, there's this show that I love. I'm an action junkie. I love that type of stuff. There's a show on Prime. It's called Reacher. There's a dude who's this giant hulking mass who goes and does crazy stuff, right? Like, there's this one episode where he talks about, he's like, this is your job. Don't let anybody distract you from doing your job. And I think about that with operations a lot, where it's not the flashy thing. It's not the sexy job. It's not the, you're not always on stage, even though I am right now, but like, it's not the job that everyone gets super hyped about, but it's the job that makes everybody else do their job better. And so I consider myself really a chief of staff to the marketing team. And I think I like Chief Silo Buster a lot more than chief of staff. Maybe that should be put that on LinkedIn for everybody. For all my Game of Thrones fans, like the hand of the king, right? That's your role. You're not the king, you're not the king's guard, but you're the person that's helping. You're the strategic advisor. And so that's why I think about this. That's my entire job, is to do this. So that's with that context about who I am and what I consider my role to be. Let's talk about alignment. That's what we're here to talk about, right? Because when you think about a revenue team, right, you have marketing just wants to prove to the business that marketing is actually doing its job, right? What's the average CMO tenure or VP of marketing tenure is, like, what, 9 months? Or how do you actually prove that it's working? Because like, when you think about it, marketing's job is to educate a market and bring the right people into the door. That's why it's called marketing. You're not closing. We actually already have a department for that. It's called sales, right? Like, it's your marketing to people. So how do you prove that that's actually working? That's what marketing cares about. Then you have sales, who says, I don't care. I just want to close, the Apples and the Walmarts and the Southwest of the world and hit my quota for new business, so I can go take a month off and go golf at Palm Springs, right? Like, that's what they're thinking about. Then you have CS, who's, my whole job is to make sure that everybody you just brought in doesn't leave, because if our churn rate is too high, then we lose our valuation. And then finance is sitting there in the background saying, look, I really couldn't care less about what any of you do from your program standpoint. You just need to prove that it's working, or you're not getting the extra budget that you asked for, right? So you have all of these different teams that have a stake in the go-to-market process. And what happens is this creates what I'm going to call the Babelfish problem. Like, this would not be a Hitchhiker's Guide to Marketing Analytics if we didn't mention our namesake, right? What this is...
Did I tell you about eruditeness? That's why you're here. We invite erudite.
Right? Exactly. Like, in the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? The Babelfish is a small little alien that goes inside your ear and allows you it instantly translates any spoken language. That's very basic what it's doing. And that's kind of what happens across teams, right? You have sales who, if marketing is saying, oh, hey, look, pipeline's healthy, sales is going to immediately translate that to, well, we have a lot of open opportunities, quality is debatable, half of them are probably dead. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Or MQL velocity is up 30%. We're getting a lot more people through the door. Okay, well, how many of them actually have the budget to have a conversation with me? That's what they're hearing versus what you're saying. And then the inverse with marketing, right? Where some sales is saying, hey, we're following up with these leads, and marketing is translating that to, we always give them leads. They always say they're terrible, yet they never call fast enough. They don't follow up with enough rigor. They only call them 3 times. Like, tales all this time. Like, we hear this all the time between sales and marketing. Or the attribution is broken, right? If someone says that, marketing is now thinking, great, now everybody just wants credit for this cool campaign that I designed, and no one wants to give me the money to buy a tool that actually measure this. Like, that's how it's getting translated, for better or for worse. And I don't want to paint this as like a cynical take. Like, I genuinely believe people are better, more good than bad in the world. But like, that's how we hear things, because again, we have different goals and different focuses. And so your job in RevOps, so anyone here that's calling, like, if you're in marketing ops or RevOps or sales ops, whatever operations function, your job, remember I said, like, do your job. Your job is to get all these departments aligned towards one shared goal. And really that's winning revenue, right? There's a lot of debate on, should marketing own a revenue number or not? That's like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is at the end of the day, we all want to win. We want the company to win revenue. That's how the company performs. That's how we get our bonuses at the end of the year. That's how we do, exits and IPOs. And what you have to understand being an ops is that we're supposed to have different goals for every team, right? Like marketing is casting the net, sales is closing the deal. That requires different metrics. And that does bring misalignment, unfortunately. So your job is to get everybody not to think, like your job isn't to get the VP of sales to care about click-through rates. Your job isn't to get the VP of marketing to care about why you should do cold calling. That's not what your job is. Your job is to make sure that, hey, these programs that you're running, these are the ones that are working and these are the ones that are not. And hey, you're doing this really, really cool thing, but it's just not yielding results. And I'm not talking about direct attribution. Even things like share of voice or like brand, like things that are hard to track necessarily, but you can still make inferred judgments on is it working or not. So anyways, my point being that your job in ops is not to convince anybody what they should care about. Your job is to take these really, really smart leaders and get them to see, hey, the things that you care about, it's either working or it's not. And here's how you can better support this other team so we all win together. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think about this. And I'm really curious for you, Nadia, how do you see this, right? What's been your experience here as we talk about this?
If we take a step back and we look at when marketing has put itself in this very measurement-driven box, probably up until 2010s, in different degrees, but we still gravitated to what you guys have seen on Mad Men, right? Like marketing was all about creativity. Branding was super, super important. Everything that you see in the large, consumer brands being front and center, that was pretty much front and center for most companies. Then the digital world came about where we started tracking things, the Silver Pop and then Marketo, and then all of these metrics that today inundate your inboxes that became a thing, right? And out of a sudden, this focus shifted that all of the creative stuff, all of the brand stuff, all of this raw artistic value that gets people to turn their head or to stop their scroll or to pay attention to what your team did, it started being taken for granted. Because look, there's a number. And if you double it and if you triple it, how much more money can I give you where you can 10x it, right? And then the kind of race to the bottom, the sky is the limit to what you could do with it. And there's always this split between the brand and then the demand. Everything that we measure on the sales side, finance side, it's all in the bucket of demand. But brand, it's the leading metric if you think about it.
Yeah.
And if that does not take place amongst the activities that you do, that demand will become incrementally that much harder and that much short-term focus as opposed to something that will work back for you tomorrow. The Salesforce brand works for them no matter when, right? Because they did put the time and effort into it. And yet you still have people pretty much within, the world of even marketing, even in technology, that either come from this background of communications and product marketing and brand, and they struggle with this measurable side because back to your point, Andrew, right? To be able to interpret this data and even ask the right questions and find the people who you actually can trust the judgment from because that they know because you're dangerous enough in this space. That's what creates this raft of people are putting so much effort into their day job, but they cannot measure the results. And because you borrow money from VCs and PEs and all the other places, because you're given budget, which is in dollars, people treat that with the same question, how is it working for me? You would ask your Vanguard or your Fidelity, how is that working for me? How is my retirement performing, right? So the question is the same here, or how do you translate all of that raw artistic effort, which ultimately is the power behind the engine that drives numbers? That's why so many people struggle with articulating that ROI when they think about it in a very narrow dimension. Because again, right, you're doing things over here that are driving people's recall and brand equity and all those things, which are not measurable, which some even scoff at, they're fluff metrics. Well, that's arguable because go ahead and not do that. Go ahead and produce AI flop and see what that gets you.
Yeah, I know. I love what you said too about the idea of what is Vanguard or Fidelity? That's something we talk about all the time here at ObservePoint. Our VP of marketing says, my job, you think about what's my job. My job is really to be a portfolio manager, right? Like I've been given all of this money from our CFO. How do I show them that I'm making really good investments, right? And so I
Look
can
at the
see that
slide. That's your portfolio right there.
exactly.
Look at how many funds you got, and each one of them is doing something, making you stay up late.
Exactly, right? Like and that's hard to manage, right? Like this idea of like more confusion. Now take that and expand that into the other areas of the revenue team, right? Sales has this entire network too. So does CS, right? And we're all beholden to finance of making sure that we're proving that we're doing is working. And that's why this is where we kind of get to the main theme of today, which is if you're in operations, like think of yourself as like you're this kind of neutral and you should be this neutral party. And this really is um, whether you're in a decentralized or a centralized operations team structure, you as the operations professional should be thinking about yourself in this way because you sit at the heart of all of the data and all of the systems, and you should be focusing on what I think about as agenda free data, right? Like if you're an ops, you have a tremendous amount of power when it comes to data, like more so than I think actually people realize, because what you get to control the narrative of that data. Now, AI, I think, is democratizing that a little bit, right? Because it can be a little bit like it can be neutral. But again, as we're going to talk about some things a little bit later when it comes to AI, I don't want to spoil that. But like with what's the Spider-Man quote? Like with great power comes great responsibility. Like this idea that it's right that you should tell a story with data and what's happening, why is it happening, what do we do now? Like that is a core thing about telling a data story and to use it to help you make decisions. But if you start cherry picking metrics to hide your dirty laundry, or someone you present reports to make someone else look bad, like hey, this program was terrible and it puts them in a bad position. And I'm saying that because I've seen people do this, and I've even been guilty of some of this before in my career. Like of that's not being a neutral party. That's not being a trusted advisor. That's having an agenda with your data versus telling a story to make decisions. And it's a fine line, it's a fine balance, right? Because if you do this wrong, the customer journey can snap and fall apart. Like if you do not look at data in the terms of what action do we take, and have this kind of agenda free neutral position, you could run the risk of pointing your company in a direction that it shouldn't go. And one thing that where I think you can play a really big role as an operations person, where ops should play a big role in being neutral, is finding ways to reconcile. You and I have talked about this, what we call pet metrics, right? Like, what is that metric that the stakeholder cares about more than anything else? And helping other leaders align around that. So you're not seeing it as that's not my job, or that's not my focus, or I don't own that. Like, how can I be responsible for it? So think about this. Like here at ObservePoint, our CRO is focused right now in this quarter is all about meetings held. Like I need to get my account executives in meetings with people, because we have really good data that shows like if we can talk to a decision maker, we win really, really well. Like we have really good close rates if we can just get in front of the right person. It's an interesting challenge for us, like at ObservePoint, right? Um, and so what we then talked about from a marketing standpoint is I work with the VP of marketing, he's my primary stakeholder. Our goal should not be demo requests. It shouldn't be, like really that kind of traditional hand raising. It should be, how can we get meetings scheduled, right? What can we do to get somebody to just book a meeting? And because at that point, we've done like marketing has really gone up to the precipice of what it can do and what it's responsible for. And then we hand it over. But then we can directly tie, hey, these are our initiatives. Like if we're doing stuff that drives getting meetings scheduled, we are supporting the team and being a good partner, and the entire revenue organization is working. That doesn't mean we're not going to focus on brand. We're not going to focus on other programs. We're not saying that, but that becomes like our primary KPI above MQLs, above demo requests, above any other metric, because it gets the team working in the same pace. I'm curious, like, is that something you've seen, like how that kind of unity, or is that a pipe dream? Am I talking crazy? Like, what do you think?
Sometimes all of this sounds so basic and so common sense. And yet, when you go back to your reality, you just kind of fall into the compliance with what's already there. But to me, If any of you guys are old enough to remember what colleges required to read, at least business schools, Dale Carnegie's book, How to Make Friends and Influence People. And one of the key principles in that book was figure out what the person on the other side of the conversation cares about and get genuinely interested in that. So get genuinely interested in them, right? And what you're saying is essentially that, like everybody has their area of interest, which that could be written into their comp plan and you will never know, but to them it's important. So if you help connect those dots of how what you are talking about from another stakeholder aligns with what this person truly cares about, and you just got to listen and pay attention, right? I'm sure they will bring it up multiple times. Then just right there, you made them feel like you care about what they do. And you become a strategic player. They lean on you as opposed to treat you as help, as a service or a ticket person. And that changes even your job satisfaction rate.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it opens doors that would otherwise be closed. That's what I've seen. Like this has been. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, of the things that really have helped me advance my career. Even though my title is just marketing ops manager, I'm involved in really, really important strategic. Like I mentioned, the chief of staff. Like I get exposed to a lot of conversations that probably a lot of people would not be privy to. Things like compensation, performance, structure of the team, like a lot of conversations that, someone in marketing ops who just manages HubSpot or Marketo wouldn't have. And that's because of how I position myself as this trusted advisor I'm here to make you look good and do your job better. Anyways, yeah, lots of cool things. Oh, I could talk about this slide for hours, but we only have 1 hour today. So let's now talk about we got to talk about AI. I mean, is
that new thing?
Yeah. What's AI? What does it stand for? All in? That's what the cowboys say. I don't know, right? Like,
I mean, we're all in.
Right? Like it's and I think sometimes we might feel like I felt this sometimes. Like if I hear about AI one more time, I'm gonna lose it. But we have to talk about it here. And what I want to share is, there's a lot of debate right now. And I'll preface this. I am not an AI expert, right? Like I'm not an expert in modeling. That's not my area of expertise, but I've read a lot and, watched a lot of stuff. So I feel like I can have a conversation about it, right? I've read, the AI is not yet capable of human reasoning, right? Human reasoning relies on intuition, emotional intelligence. It's not just about memory. Like AI can memorize and scan. It can scan data better than we can. Like it can process thousands of lines of data better than we ever could. But it doesn't have intuition or emotional intelligence. Maybe one day, who knows, right? Like maybe one day we'll get there, but it doesn't have that. So one of the fundamental flaws, and we saw this release of GPT-5, that was last year, right? Where just adding more data to the model doesn't make it better. That was actually the playbook, and it's why ChatGPT became so popular so fast. This is super reductive, right? But like a lot of what OpenAI was doing was they were running into struggles of what's come down to, it's called the scaling problem, where just giving an LLM exponentially more computing power does not proportionally make them smarter. And that was true for ChatGPT 2. Well, it was GPT 2, 3, and 4. And it's why OpenAI signed these massive contracts for like data centers, is because we're just going to continue to scale up the input, and then we'll get better, they'll be proportionally smarter. And then with GPT-5, that scaling model broke. And like we can see that there are mathematical limitations to the current structure of LLMs right now. And my point being here is what I'm not trying to do is dissuade us from using AI, because I use AI often. I'm not yet in the agent world. It's on my roadmap for Q2 and Q3 of this year, and that's what I'll talk about here, is like I try to be very intentional about how I use automation. And my point being is like you still need to be a master of your craft, right? Business like anything it's a profession. Think of it as like a trade. Like if you're working in a trade as like a carpenter or a plumber or anything that requires like an apprenticeship, it's almost like why don't we do that in business, right? We have internships, but it's not really the same thing as an apprenticeship where you spend years becoming a master of craft. And there's a difference between that and being proficient with AI, right? Like AI, like we mentioned, can process thousands of rows in seconds, but can AI tell you that 8,000 of those came from a bot farm? No, not unless you tell it. Like, you have to prompt it and tell it. Maybe it could make that inference if the model was good enough. But like, if you forget to prompt, like to include context in your prompt, it's not going to give you a good output. So this is kind of the point I'm trying to make here, is that we as humans, we can understand there's intuition that we have that we bring to the table that AI just doesn't have. And that's not to say that we're better, you shouldn't use AI or whatever. Like, I'm a big proponent of this, but it's more of just understanding that AI is the calculator. You are the mathematician, right? Don't confuse using the tool with becoming a master of craft. And that craft in ops is about alignment, right? It's the soft skill that a jumble of code that doesn't have intuition and emotional intelligence can't do. Again, maybe one day, who knows? But like right now, that's why I talk about this. Is like, no one's talking about the key thing that I think matters more than AI, which is how do you get these teams aligned? Because otherwise, here's what's going to happen. What ends up happening is you have teams that are just like, all right, we're going to need AI to automate things. It's like, great, that's cool. What do you want to automate? And you end up like, what if you end up automating some, free account PLG nurture sequence when your company runs an enterprise sales motion? Now you've got all these prospects that just get these like start free trial emails, and your CEO's like, what the heck is this happening? They're interrupting my sales flow. Good luck navigating that conversation. I hope you rest easy the next day. But it's like it's just all of these. The point that I'm trying to make here, right, is that AI is great and has all these amazing use cases, and it's fundamentally changing the way that we work in operations, especially, and really any area of business. But what you have to start, like, what is like the context? What's my business model? What kind of customers do I serve? What's our go-to-market motion? Don't just ask, can I automate this, but should I automate this, right? We see this on LinkedIn all the time, right? I almost get exhausted from it. It's like, I replaced my entire marketing team with all these agents and blah, blah, blah. And okay, but what is that? Is that the play for your business right now? Is that the need you have right now? Is it, I actually need to find a way to manage our events better? So quick little story. One of the things that I think about is, my whole focus with AI is, what are the manual things that I'm doing and how can I automate that away? How can I make it so I don't have to do that manual task over and over and free up my time to do other things? So that's what we do with like our events. Like, we don't have an event management platform. We manage a lot out of Google Sheets. So it's, how can I use AI to help me have better integrations between Marketo, between Salesforce, between our form capture, all of these things, to remove that manual effort, for even simple things of like marking somebody's t-shirt size, like stuff like that. Like, these are all manual efforts. How can I remove that? And you being in that VP of marketing seat, like, how does this resonate with you? Like, where do you see automation being dangerous, in what you're working on?
So we are a marketing analytics company. You can only imagine how many takers we have to the question of who wants to automate X. I mean, hands just fly up in the air. We all got analyst people, engineering people, data people. But the thing that cracks me up really about the whole, I replaced my marketing team with 5 agents, 10 agents, put whatever number, is the fact that OpenAI, there are under 500 people right now. At least that's what it shows up on LinkedIn, right? Could be more. But within the same 500 or under 500 person pool, they got 100 marketers. Claude has over, 200 marketers. Like,
Yep.
if that's the case, why do you guys need all these marketers? Like, if you're telling the world to replace them. All this being the case, for that judgment call that has to be made, because what good looks like, cannot be made by anything that's automated or doesn't have reasoning. And one of my previous bosses, he accidentally had the same last name as me. I mean, Davis is a popular last name. When he was hiring me during the hiring process, he had this project that people had to do. And a lot of people cringe at projects. Like, I'm not going to, give you a portion of my brain to do this project. Maybe you will not hire me and you're crowdsourcing. Well, he approached it differently. He goes, my project is on seeing your marketing taste. And I'm like, what? What is marketing taste? But he was actually trying to figure out whether a person had a good eye to what, a kind of a passable product looks like within the world of marketing. And that's actually a skill. When you look at something, like, It doesn't look right. It looks like a Temu product or a Shein product or Alibaba product versus a branded product. And I think that's where that human judgment of what good taste or what good output looks like is still king.
I love that. And, the whole, I mean, what I love about it is hopefully no one feels discouraged about like that is, I don't have that skill. You can develop that skill. Like, sure, some people have a little bit more innate, preference to being able to do that, but you can develop that skill, right? Like doing good marketing, looking at results, you hone that craft. It's all about becoming a master of craft. And again, bringing this full circle, right, from an alignment standpoint, what what I see and what I think about is here. Let's There's really good context, right? All about AI and about alignment, but like what I want to focus now for really the last half of this of our time together is how do you create that alignment? Like how do you get people to see you as that trusted advisor? And I want to share a story. There's actually a recent story and a true story, and I don't share this to be like, hey, I'm so awesome, even though I'm in marketing, so I have a little bit of an ego, but like it's not to stroke
You're
that ego.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nadia. Thank you. Um, I was had I excuse me, I was doing an evaluation on a piece of marketing technology that we were looking at. So ObservePoint 2025 was a really, really successful year for us. And I got more budget for marketing technology, which is unheard of, right? Like literally Christmas Day in the middle of February. Um, and I started this, like I evaluate our entire stacks, like where are our gaps? What are we trying to focus on? What is our like our go-to-market strategy for 2026, and really focused on enterprise marketing. Like that's our focus this year is really building out a strong enterprise marketing motion because ObservePoint, we do business with massive companies. I think the numbers around like 40% of the Fortune 500 are customers of ours. Like we work with companies with really like our deal cycles are very long. We deal with sometimes 2 or 3 procurement rounds. Like that's a very different style of marketing than running like a PLG motion, right? So it became okay. What do we have the right tools to facilitate that process better? Like where are the gaps? Where are we breaking down? And one of the things that we were looking at, there was this one direction of a specific type of tool we were looking at, and I was super into it. I did a ton of research. I evaluated multiple vendors. Like I have my own process. I'm really, really intelligent. I'm very, very particular when I look at technology. And I basically said, hey, this is the tool we're going to use. And I had given verbal commitment to this vendor we were going to sign with them. And then I was just sitting and thinking and evaluating and like, hey, wait, maybe this actually isn't the problem that what we have. And I went and sat down with our VP of marketing and I said, his name's Ethan. I was like, Ethan, I actually don't think this is the right thing anymore. And laid it like all the reasons why. And, hey, I think there was another problem I think we were having that was probably more important than what we were trying to solve for. It's still an important problem. But after like we both realized together that wasn't the most important problem to solve. And he told me, he's like, Andrew, this is why I trust you. Because he's like, I was ready to sign for this contract, but you without prompt, like basically said like, hey, actually, we're not going to do this. Like even after I championed the tool, we kind of said, there's like, actually, it's actually not the right thing for us. And so that's the story I'm kind of trying to illustrate with this is there's power in saying no. Right. And what I don't mean, because because anybody can just say yes to a new tool and but it's the person who is like, hey, is this going to help our business right now? That's how you establish yourself as trust. And what I don't mean is you just become contrarian all the time, right? Like that's the equally fast way to lose trust is if you just say no to everything. Like this might be a hot take, but I think sometimes people in operations clutch their pearls way too much about stuff where it's like, I'm not going to create this field and I'm not going to do this. And it's like, okay, yeah, like trust me, as somebody who works in ops, like I'm not saying you should just open the floodgates and do whatever the heck you want inside of any system, but it's where can you bend a little bit? Like being a neutral, just because you're a neutral party doesn't mean that you don't have biases, right? Like you're coming into the conversation with biases just as much as they are. So putting those biases aside, how can I again focus on what is the goal of the business? What is the most important problem to solve? And knowing like, hey, even just because you champion something maybe a year ago doesn't mean it's right today. So that's actually kind of my next little story that I want to share, where your favorite tool might not be the right tool for the job. So I used to be on the customer advisory board for a piece of software. I was a massive champion. Like they flew me out to New York. I was like meeting with the CEO and like the people on the marketing team, like advising on their product decisions. Loved this platform, loved this company, and I still do. Like I don't want to mean that past tense, like we had a falling out. Like I love this product, and it's one of my favorites that I've ever worked with in my entire career. But it came to a point where I brought it here at ObservePoint. We had a use case. I evaluated the business case, and we got everyone, like the VP of marketing, the CRO, signed off on it. And they're like, "Hey, let's do it." We really struggled to get it adopted. It just didn't really take, not just internally in terms of like from a bandwidth perspective, but also just our customers. It just wasn't resonating with our customers for whatever reason. And we could debrief about that, why that was for a long time. But same thing. I eventually went to the VP of marketing and said, "Hey, Ethan, I think that we need to cancel this product, this tool. It's not working for us, and it's not our focus for 2026. It's going to distract us from being focused and being laser focused on our goal for 2026. So I think we should cancel it." Similar thing. He's like, "You know what? I think you're right. We should probably get rid of it." And and that's kind of the point of this bullet point right here is you have to, just because it's your favorite tool doesn't mean it's the right tool right now. And you have to be really, really, you have to exercise good judgment on that. And because at the end of the day, trust is the currency, right? Like when you cancel something that you love and it's ultimately the right decision, you've just bought more influence of the organization, more than any report, more than any dashboard, anything like that. That is how you get people to trust you, because you are removing your emotion from the decision. You're focused on what is the goal of the business. And you're following, like I've written about this and spoken about this, right? About, my tech stack management framework, right? Like every tool in your tech stack has to have strategic alignment, and you have to have purposeful composition, right? Every tool should support the strategy, and every tool gets a clear, well-defined use case. That's how you do it, right? And so I'll turn it to you, Nadia, about your thoughts on this, right? We've talked a lot about trust, and it's a hot topic now of how do you gain influence in an organization? Like, I'm curious what you think.
Actually, I'm going to go back to AI and what we talked about,
Okay.
because right now, like, what's the most popular word on LinkedIn? And it's not AI slop. You guys cannot say AI slop. It's Claude.
Oh yeah.
Right now, it's Claude.
That's right.
Everybody wants to get Claude. It's like, Andrew, to your point, when we were doing pre-show, it used to be Clay. Then it was N8N. And now it's Claude. And maybe I'll stay Claude. I don't know. So, I mean, we're a Gemini shop. We're built with Google. BigQuery is at the bottom of CaliberMind as a data warehouse. Gemini is the functionality that helps people kind of get deeper insights into their data and everything else within it. So when somebody says, let's pay for Claude, what do you think the reaction from people that are paying the bills would be, right? Like, Why? We already have something that's part of what we got. Well, when I looked at it, to me, I had a specific use case, right? Because all sales teams have AI slop in decks. And I incentivize you guys to go and look at your decks that the sales team generates that you may not see, but they go out to market, see what that looks like. I actually got to see ours, and I'm like, we can do better. And if any of you out there saw those decks, I will have to do an apology tour. Maybe there will be another Hitchhiker's Guide episode. But anyways, Claude has this collaboration functionality where you can create a project. And if you get very careful with the markdown files that go into the prompt, you can actually get it to produce decks that come out in the same format, in all of your right colors, with the logos and everything else. It's not going to be like super designer, like high level with imagery, but it will be very on brand. All of the alignment will be correct. All of the positioning of the bullets will be correct. The fonts will be correct. I sometimes wonder, do they even know that there's more than one font out there? Like sometimes they use the same font, right? So, that was my angle. I want a tool where I can give it to a salesperson, say, hey, create the slides off of the notes from a sales call. Use this tool and do not create whatever you created before with Google Beautify button. So it worked. Because again, it was approached from a very specific use case standpoint. And I always remind, our people, like, everybody wants to use things for many other applications because there is interesting and there's useful. And a lot of people gravitate into the interesting thing. Can I do it? Right? The gaming interest. Business is not a individual contributor sport. This is not the event where you're the sole performer on the stage, right? It's a village sport. Like it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to win in the business. So when you think about all of these things, if you can create a process or introduce a process that aligns people or helps collaboration within the teams, people will pay more attention to the benefits from that process, as opposed to you saying that you found this cool thing that you use on a daily basis and therefore everybody else should use it. You will run against different kind of levels of comfort with technology, anything and everything. Make it basic. What you're focusing on is not getting people to be super duper Einsteins of technology, but what you're focused on is continuity and consistency of a process. And then you will be trusted by those who are in business to align people underneath them, which are their teams.
I love that. Love that so much. Right. He says exactly like the whole second point of my tech stack management framework is purposeful composition, right? Every tool gets clear, well-defined use case. Like it's not that any of these tools are bad or wrong, or it's just, can you like make sure you have a use case that it fits a need for your business? That's all it takes. And if you have it, go for it. Like make it work, but have the courage to challenge your assumptions, to challenge, yeah, this would be good for us, but is it the best? So we did this really cool thing here at ObservePoint where the entire revenue team and our kickoff, we created vision boards, which if you're familiar with a vision board is, it's basically like this collection of images that kind of inspire you and motivate you and help you focus on, something for whatever that time period is. And on one of mine is this quote. It's a quote from this guy named Dallin H. Oaks. He says, "We have to forego some good things in order to choose others which are better or best." Right? I think about that all the time because that's like, there are so many good things that you can do in marketing and ops and whatever, but what is the best? What is going to really drive the focus now to have the results? Well, and I don't mean that to like sacrifice results in the future, but it's again, what is the best thing right now? So let's talk about this next kind of point here of how do you generate alignment? And really it's about how do you position yourself? And I hear this all the time, right? Is like, how can I not be seen as this ticket taker? Like no one in ops wants to be seen as this kind of reactive order taker of, hello, can I get a list upload with a side of an email, please? Yes, thank you. It's going to take 2 days. Like no one in ops likes to live in that world. It sucks. And a lot of that comes from what are you doing to be proactive? I think about things. I think about things in the term of really taking ownership here. Like this is a thing where it requires you and ops to have a mindset shift of, I need to go to these people proactively with insights, as opposed to waiting for the VP of marketing to say, hey, can you pull an Adobe Summit ROI report? You going to them before we're planning for that event and saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing from our data from last year and previous years. Here's what I think we should do. That positions you as not just a ticket taker, but as an architect, somebody, again, that trusted advisor. You're coming to the people that make decisions with insights to help them make decisions. Can you add this field to Salesforce? Okay, maybe, yeah, I can. It's like, before we add that field, what decision is going to help you drive? Like, what are you going to do differently with this field in our CRM? And that doesn't mean you're saying no, but it's getting them to also think through, wait, do I actually really need this? Or maybe there's a better way. And then you become somebody that you can bounce ideas off with them, right? Again, it's not about being contrarian. It's about helping the people that make decisions think through their problems. And then you become the person they always think about to help solve those problems. Here's an example, a relatively recent example. So I was approached by our director of events, and she tells me, hey, we have more budget this year for Adobe Summit. So ObservePoint goes to Adobe Summit every year. It's one of our largest pipeline drivers of the year because it's massive. And a lot of our customer base uses Adobe products, so it's a no-brainer for us to go there, right? It's a massive home run. And we're like, hey, we're getting more budget this year for Adobe Summit. That's always awesome. Let's spend more money. And she comes to me and says, hey, we're getting more budget. I need you to help me figure out how to best use it. Again, think of how validating that is as somebody in operations to have somebody who makes decisions come to you and says, hey, I need you to help me make a really important decision about how I'm going to spend my money. Awesome role to be in. I love being in that role. And so I did an analysis. It's basically, hey, should we spend more money on a larger booth space, or should we invest in other programs? did a full analysis, right? Because it used to be that back in like 2019 and 2018, ObservePoint did have a larger booth space, ran the numbers. There was really no difference in the number of leads that we generated. In fact, we had more last year than the highest year of using a large booth. The metrics that I cared about in terms of win rate and the pipeline to spend ratio, like they were better with our smaller booths. I said, it's a no-brainer, guys. Like, we have this extra money. Let's instead put that money towards better activation. As opposed to having a meeting room for one day, we're going to have it for 2 days. We're going to invest in more premium swag giveaways, like really incentivize people to come to the booth, be engaged, take demos, take meetings, so they can win. Like we're giving away iPads, right? It's like something super awesome, but we're only giving those away to very specific people that meet certain criteria and have really good engagement with us. And none of that, like all of that came from, hey, how can we use this money in an effective way, right? And we use data to challenge the assumption that just this bigger booth is going to be better for us. And it was a much better process. Like it was really validating for me in ops, and looking forward to see how the results come out, honestly. So as we run up on kind of the end of time, I want to talk about, here's some practical steps you can take, right? These are things that I do that like kind of the soft skills. Now I want to talk about what can you focus on to develop those? And what I'll say is, like, step 0 is you have to understand the metrics that your leaders care about. Like everything we've just talked about, none of it matters. If you take one thing away from this session, is you need to go talk to your CRO or your VP of marketing or your VP of customer success and deeply understand what metrics do they care about. That's your homework for today, really, for me, is if you don't understand that, you cannot be that neutral strategic advisor, because you're not thinking about things that they think about, right? You're not looking through the business through their lens. So you can then find a way to merge everything together. And then, okay, step 1, right? Like find those points of friction, right? Like map out where sales and marketing are accusing each other of things not working, and then find ways to improve that. Like that becomes your job. You, again, proactively say, hey, here's what the numbers are saying. Here's what you're telling me. Here's what the data is also telling me. Why don't we try X, Y, Z, right? Going into that, it doesn't start with just making some new dashboard to fix it. Start with seeking to understand. What's that quote? Seek to understand, then to be understood. Like seek to understand those decision makers, and then things will be a lot better. My second point, like a step to really get there, is apply that human reasoning before the automation, right? Before you build any type of workflow or integration, like sit down with those teams and think, why are we doing this? What does this process exist? Like if nobody knows, should we be doing it, right? Like figure out apply that human reasoning, use the intuition that you have that AI doesn't have to help make those decisions. And then the third thing I'll say is like find the shared metric, right? What I talked about earlier about meetings held, that's the mandate from the CRO. I want more meetings held. What can marketing do to own this? Meeting scheduled, right? That becomes the focus. So these are kind of like the 3 steps that I would think about as we're moving in this direction.
And one thing I will add to this self-inflection point where you realize what are you good at and what are you not good at, but it's important for you to develop that skill to get to the place where you can actually get people to listen to you, right? And in a lot of cases, it's essentially figuring out whether you're an introvert. And
Yeah.
the point that holds you back from going out to people proactively and asking questions is just the fact that your nature is that of an introvert. A lot of people in operations feel extremely competent and confident amongst systems, and they choose to stay amongst systems, not, amongst people where you're not on the sales team where you talk all day, right? And I mean, being on the other side of this, even running these events, right? I know I like to talk. I really do. And I have to remind myself, Nadia, this is not about you. You have a guest who is talking, right? So the same is true. It's uncomfortable to hold yourself back or push yourself forward, whichever way it is. But ultimately, if you find out what that is that holds you back, I think that's what will help you overcome this, and then you will be successful.
I love that so much, right? Because that's really like where can you challenge yourself to do better at this, right? Like one of my biggest struggles, open about me, is I struggle with clearly articulating points that I'm wanting to make on the spot. I really, really struggle with that. Like I am someone who needs time to prepare, who needs time to think through, and because I don't want to say something stupid or I don't want to say something
Well,
that's
you're an analyst too by trade. Like it's hard not to overthink.
you can't, yeah, like that's how my brain works, right? That's how I think about it. So I'm constantly trying to push myself of how can I get better at being a little bit faster in things, or maybe positioning what I'm saying as not an absolute, but as more of an inference. Like it's all about that soft skill dance, right? And figuring that out. So yeah, do we have any, I think that's really kind of like my main thing here that we'll leave at is just as you're thinking about generating alignment, right? Is um, what are the metrics that people care about, and and really aligning and building trust. Like that's all. Alignment is centered on trust. It's really what it is. And you, if you're in operations or any type of role like this, you have a lot of power in an organization, more than I think a lot of people realize that they do. Even to somebody, again, like just because you're not a VP or a director, or maybe you don't have direct reports, like that doesn't mean you can't have influence in an organization. If you build trust, and it's a slow process, but honestly, like if you do a lot of these things, like you'll find better harmony with the people that you're working with. Like that's kind of the main. That was a lot of the main pitch going to this is right. Like if there's a lot of tension in an organization, that's really hard to address. And honestly, a lot of times, like it's a cultural thing at an organization, but there are still ways that you can influence it. And it's not playing politics. It's not what it is. I think sometimes alignment and influence maybe gets seen as a negative way. I know that I struggle with that sometimes, where I'm like, am I being a little sneaky? It's like, no, I'm not. Like I'm just trying to get people to think about things in the right way, and put aside my own biases to do that. So yeah.
And I would add one thing. When you are in a function, whatever that function is, whether it's, CS, sales, operations, in a lot of cases, especially in larger organizations, you're exposed to just your area of the business. And it's really hard to think outside of what you see because you just don't know what you don't know. And figuring out and kind of developing this curiosity to understand the entire business motion. And I will not lie to you, it's easier to do in a smaller company than it is in the bigger company. So think about your business unit maybe in the bigger company. And figuring out that kind of business logic and kind of the way the organization goes to market. It goes through you one way or another through the systems, right? So that you can articulate what you're saying within the lens of how the business goes to market.
Yeah.
And in the resources section, there's a trilogy. There's 3 papers that I wrote at the end of last year. It's marketing means business, right? Ultimately, what that focuses on, especially the first one, by the way, there's no gate, is how can you make yourself think through the lens of what business focuses on. You can actually figure it out, and it's not a hard thing to do once you know what you're looking for. So again, broaden your horizons, look at things the way people think about things, and then you'll be able to actually care about the very things that your stakeholders care about, like in Dale Carnegie's book.
That's right. I love that too. I'll say one more thing because it made me think about this. I used to work for a consulting company. I used to work for LeadMD, for anyone, like any of the OGs in the ops space, like know who LeadMD was. And I remember sitting down with the CEO, Justin Gray, very successful entrepreneur. And one of the things that he talks about was, like, as a consultant, like your job is to understand how our clients, how do they make money, and how do we make money as a business, right? Like, and what can you do to support the function of making money, right? Like I know, like I'm a person who believes really strongly in what's called conscious capitalism. Like I have my own like kind of beliefs and preferences there.
We'll do
Like
a
at the end
session
of the day,
on
like a
that.
business is trying to make money. Like, and so like if your focus becomes how does the sales team contribute to the business making money? How does the marketing team contribute to the business making money? And so on and so forth. That is a really good lens of doing exactly what you just said. Because then it's all about, okay, my programs, whether it's long term or short term, are all about making the business money, which is really what we care about. That's how we win. So
Atik had a good comment. Thank you, Atik, for bringing this up. He said the same goes for product and marketing. The same goes for for marketing and sales, right? When it comes to alignment, because it's so easy to fall out of step when you don't think exactly about what you just said, Andrew. And it goes even further. I am here to bring value. My salary, my total comp is a line item, which is an expense for the business. What
Right.
is my value to the organization? If I were not here, could this be invested in something else that would generate more money? Because you can get offended about this, but ultimately it's business, nothing personal, right? So people make choices and place bets. So thinking about the value that you bring, the strategic value, the value of insights, the value of challenge, this is what you were hired to do. And you were hired because you have the brain that is absolutely capable to do that.
Right.
So you don't have to be a naysayer like what you were saying, but you can ask questions and expose things that others can think about critically. And that way they will think that they arrived to that.
Exactly.
Therefore, it
Right.
makes them feel better about themselves. And you were just the man or the woman behind the curtain, orchestrating the show.
Right. That's right. And like to even add on to I take your point is valid, right? It's a valid concern and frustration, right? Like sales and marketing are almost always set out to be enemies. I know it feels that way sometimes, and that I'll say two things to that. One, um, the CEO here at ObservePoint, he is kind of an OG in the SaaS space. He was the co-founder of Omniture, which was sold to Adobe and became Adobe Analytics. Like, dude knows how to build a business. And he said something really interesting, and I think it's really true. He says, "Success cures all issues with culture." And it's like maybe it's really reductive, but I kind of believe that because it's like if you're having issues with marketing and sales not getting along, maybe it's because you're not winning, right? And let's like what so again, like how if you can find ways to win and place bets strategically and have them pay off, it's going to solve a lot of problems. Here's a real example to kind of address like how do you because okay, how do you help sales and marketing to not be enemies of Teak? I want to think about that. So we had I won't go into like super specific details because like I don't want to like expose anybody, but like we had a rep here at ObservePoint who was really struggling to his quota, just really struggling, and was also having a really hard time like catching the vision of what marketing was trying to do. So our VP of marketing came in right around the same time that I did, like new leaders, new focus for marketing. How do we really make things take off in a better way? And he was really struggling. Like the leads he was getting just weren't really good. Outbound wasn't working well either. Like, what do we do? And so finally, the marketing team placed a very strategic bet with a specific kind of event. It's this event called the CPO Forum. It's like super exclusive executive forum for chief privacy officers, which is a really big part of our audience. And that landed him. He met his quota from one event. Like straight up, just like insane deals closed from that. And the shift that he's had, mindset, everything has been night and day, right? Like so before, kind of mope around a little bit, like this isn't like things aren't working. To now, it's like coming proactive, like, hey, here's this really cool lead. Oh, I had this really cool idea. I want to chase this down. So that's kind of the point of like winning fixes a lot of this. And again, where ops fits is facilitating, again, being proactive and saying, hey, here's this cool bet that I think we should take. If it works, it's going to be awesome. So, and I'm not going to take credit for that because it wasn't me who found that event, but like it's the idea that I guess the idea is still there, right? That if you can find ways to give, if you're in marketing, find ways to give sales success. If you're in sales, find ways to give marketing success. It might sound a little weird, like how do I do that? But it's how could like maybe it's being a little bit better on your follow-up, being a little bit better on your data hygiene, like whatever it is, like so that's really the thing is that if you can find ways to win together, then the enemy, like again, the whole idea of Switzerland, right? Like you're trying to be this neutral party to get people who are at odds with each other to agree and align. And that's what I would say is a way to help fix that.
I love the idea of winning together. Thank you, Andrew. It's been fantastic. We should have you back. We definitely will think of another topic. I love this conversation. Let me tease up the next episode because it's that time of the year when we're releasing the 2026 State of Marketing Attribution Report. We released it last year for the first time. People loved it. This year, we went deeper and bigger and better. We invited Scott Brinker and Franz Remiersma to help us with market research. They did a bunch of interviews out there, and we got the whole write-up of what attribution looks like in companies. So make sure you put this on your calendar. This is in April, and we will reveal the report to you. And with this, thank you guys for your time.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks, Nadia. Really appreciate the opportunity and hope this helps somebody out with that, with alignment. Go out there and get aligned. Really, that's the end.
Go get them. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.